thank you. Ooh, this is tricky. Hang on. Damn. Oh, yes, I know. I'm taking this so seriously. Round one. Once you've had a lover robot, you'll never want a real man again. Well, that is Gigolo Joe from AI.
Once you've had a lover robot, you'll never want a real man again.
It wasn't as much CGI as you'd imagine. They were using a technology which Steven referred to as pie in the sky, but I learnt the other day that that was just his term for it. It was a stepping stone from green screen to volume, which is what we use nowadays, which are these vast LED screens. So there was blue screen around us, which was a sort of embellishment of big sets. And the pie in the sky, you were able to create a set, look with the pie in the sky at what was going to be added so that you could act around it. I mean, I've done films that have been entirely on blue screen. So this felt like a real playground for me. It felt pretty straightforward. And the creatures, the robots, were all puppets. They were all present, being made by the great Stan Winston. In fact, that everything didn't go precisely to plan was precisely the plan. Oh, you know what? I've got a good story about this line. That's Dumbledore. I wrote this line. I just thought it was very Dumbledore. The fact that everything didn't go precisely to plan was precisely the plan. Yeah.
The fact that everything didn't go precisely to plan was precisely the plan.
I'd read all the books to my children, and I really loved that world. He was absolutely the sort of heartbeat of those books, or rather the spirit. Harry was the heartbeat. There was something in the heart of Dumbledore, there was something in the spirit of the man that I really liked. And in fact, playing him put me in a very good place. Joe Rowling always said to me that he saw himself as a monster because of the way he had behaved in the past, and he was always trying to forgive himself. But I just always felt like he was a good, kind man, and it's nice playing good, kind men. You see a franchise like the Potter franchise, and similarly Star Wars.
You're a Jedi.
Was a world, a universe, a galaxy that I grew up watching and emulating, playing in the playground, in the play yard. I was just very curious to see how they made that universe and what are the rules. And you know, there are great gatekeepers who cherish it and really know all the details and the lineage. Getting into that was an eye-opener. I learned a few new things. Did you know there are no buttons in the Star Wars universe? You never see any buttons on any clothes. They're all ties or buckles or Velcro. There's no paper. You never see paper. And there are certain shots that you're not allowed to use because they would have been impossible to do when the film series, when it started in the 70s, and they still try and emulate the sort of rules that Lucas would have had back in the 70s when they started it. Number 3. Ah, yeah, I know this. I cry all the time, more than any woman you've ever met. That's The Holiday. I cry all the time.
You do not.
Yeah, I do. More than any woman you've ever met.
You hope that what you make appeals to people, and you hope what you make finds an audience and finds its way into people's heads and hearts. But for it to be returned to so frequently and really to become a sort of stalwart for people's celebration every year at Christmas is a wonderful thing. People assume that I've had this career of rom-coms, and this is really one or maybe 2 that I've done in 30 years. I avoided them for many, many years because I felt like it was going to lead me down a path where I became that guy who does those films. And then I was intrigued to do one. I sort of wanted to go there and test that muscle. And Nancy talked about all my favorite rom-coms that she desperately wanted to sort of emulate. Bringing Up Baby, Arsenic and Old Lace, His Girl Friday, films like that. So I was in. And we had a great time making it. It took a long time to make. Nancy likes a lot of takes. Does your depravity know no bounds? That's Sherlock Holmes. Yes. Do I have to guess which one? I think it's the first one. Yes! I'm not competitive.
Does your depravity know no bounds?
The idea of Robert playing Sherlock, Guy Ritchie's lens on that world, it just seemed like an awful lot of fun. and a really terrific idea, and it proved to be. It was a wonderful triptych. You know, the three of us bounced off each other, heated each other up, provoked each other, loved each other. It was a very tight, creative unit, with lots of others, of course, but that was at the sort of center, and they were terrific to make. It's simply your last connection to that vanished world. His world, if you will. Oof, this is tricky. Hang on. Is this Dumbledore? No. Gosh. That vanished world, his world. Okay, that's interesting. I wouldn't have, well, I didn't connect it. Damn. That one goes over there.
Is it simply your last connection to that vanished world? His world, if you will.
It was like a fairy tale. It was like a very particular universe, and the idea of stepping into it was like stepping into his world, his dream. He runs a very friendly, collective atmosphere. You all eat together, and we were staying together in this little hotel, which I think they used. They certainly used it as an exterior in one of the shots. You know, when you're in anything that is then embraced so much by others, it's a wonderful reward. You love her like a dog loves its owner. I'm going to guess that that's closer. Yes. You love her like a dog loves its owner. It was a renowned play, and by the great Patrick Marber. He had adapted it for the screenplay. There's a musicality to it, there's a rhythm to it that you know, you had to get it just so. And that's not always the case with even great writing, but with this it was like you had to get the punctuation right, you had to get the rhythm right, like a game of tennis, so that you were setting up the return ball from your fellow actor. Thank you. This may be our last moment together. There's something I need to ask you. Did you cut my fuel line? It's a great line. That's a really funny line. Damn. Who cut my fuel line? Is it Ripley? No, it's not Ripley, it's not Ripley. Do you know what I mean? It could be those, like, Tom, did you, yeah. Oh, yes, I know. It's Sky Captain. Yes. I'm taking this so seriously.
Did you cut my fuel line?
I love that film, and you know, it's so interesting. I believe that had that film been released in the last 5 years, it would have been a really big hit, because it had a sort of quality to it. You know, this is before the Marvel universe and the DC world was really being explored again, but it has this quality of sort of steampunk, retro, future, comic book dynamics, you know. It was fun, great fun to make, especially with Gwyneth. I mean, we spent most of the time in a cockpit arguing. It's a dead end.
That's not supposed to be there.
It's a dead end! Thank you. Yeah, I know what this is. Everybody should have one talent. What's yours? That's the talented Mr. Ripley.
Everybody should have one talent. What's yours?
That was a very golden time. I mean, looking back, it wasn't like we knew it was. It wasn't like we were constantly looking around saying, this is a special time. But there was a particular energy going on with all these actors at this time. You know, they're all in their mid-20s. You think Cate Blanchett, Gwyneth Paltrow, Matt Damon, Philip Seymour Hoffman, we were all there shooting this movie on location in this incredible country. There was a palpable sense of excitement, really. It's a bad day to be a racist monkey. That is Contagion.
That's a bad day to be a rhesus monkey.
I've got a feeling something happened the year it was released, or the weekend it was released. It didn't make a huge impact at the box office, and then 10 years later a pandemic hits and everyone suddenly sitting at home saying, what should we watch? Just watch a film about a pandemic. Aren't we odd? We're such odd creatures. I'd spent a lot of time on that film talking to the doctors who were advising Scott and Steven, Scott Burns, the writer, and Soderbergh, the director, and they were such interesting folk who were saying to us even then, this is going to happen, and you need to be ready for it. In fact, one of them then contacted us all afterwards and said, this isn't the big one, which is worth remembering. Thank you. Didn't anyone tell you I don't eat much? Hardly anything, in fact. All I have in the morning is a cherry Coke Zero. That's the young Pope. That's all he ever ate or drank.
Didn't anyone tell you I don't eat much? Hardly anything, in fact. All I have in the morning is a cherry Coke Zero.
I wasted an awful lot of time trying to get through these tomes of literature about past popes and the history of papal responsibility and the Vatican, and it was cold. I called up Paolo and I was like, what am I meant to do? I don't know who this guy is. And he just said, just play the man. Play the man and let everything else, you're gonna be dressed up like a Christmas tree. You're gonna look like the Pope. Just play the guy inside. And that really helped. And in fact, the guy was much closer. I can talk about this now because Paolo made a film about his childhood just a couple of years ago, but back then it wasn't really known. But he was, like Lenny, an orphan. He had lost his parents, and I think really found a little bit of Lenny, or projected a little bit of himself in Lenny. And that helped too, because to a degree I played Paolo.
We don't have a choice. We must be in harmony with God.
Popes get to choose the color of their slippers. They can either wear white, red, or gold. And apparently you can tell the type of Pope they're gonna be. Someone told me this in the Vatican, by the shoes they choose. So all the cardinals are stood there when the Pope comes out in his finery for the first time, and they all go, Benedictus, the guy who retired, wore very, very expensive red, gold-lined slippers. And I think they think that reflected his papacy. The current one wears comfortable little black pumps, I think, because he's a good guy. Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna find a nice place, have Molly and the girls move out here and start putting the pieces back together. That's Husk from The Order.
I'm gonna find a nice place, have Molly and the girls move out here.
It's a rarity that you find an untold story from the past that has such resonance in the present. And the script did a great job of taking this untold story, shining a light on it, but also folding it into a genre piece. And it read with such pace and dynamism. If you think back to the huge crowd pleasers of the 70s and 80s, films that we would all go to the cinema to enjoy, which had they had a swagger and a punch, but they were also really intelligent. It was trying to emulate those. And a character that I felt I hadn't really played, perhaps couldn't have played in the past. I mean, he's of a certain age of my age, but there's something about him that felt very familiar, again, to characters that we've seen in other films. It's a gripping ride. And I think it will also open eyes to behavior that has been going on around the world, sadly, since time began, that we need to understand better. And this maybe aids that.